We're back. We're back on this podcast. I've invited Sana onto the podcast, but I've been invited into your crib to do this. We're going to talk about my journey back to Colombia. And it's just going to be a freestyle conversation. I'm hoping to give some insights on my personal experience, some like, not advice, but like just like lived experience for maybe other adoptees to learn about, and just like treat this as a way to like honor and capture what I just experienced. And Sana is amazing. Like, I'll link in the description our last conversation so you guys can kind of see that we've already met each other at this level, and she knows about what I've been going through in many ways. So yeah, I would trust nobody else to like have this discussion with.
Thank you.
But yeah, I also saw somebody else do this on another podcast that I thought maybe we could do today to see what it's like. But I kind of want to check in on like 4 different levels.
Okay.
Just so, and maybe you can do the same if you feel called to. But mentally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally. I'm going to try to do my best. Let's see. Emotionally, today I am feeling happy, a little confused because of things going on in my personal life, but like overall content. Physically, I feel good. I've been working out and I like have been eating enough, so I feel like I'm actually rebuilding my muscle. Spiritually, I feel like strong. Just sat in a men's circle and I've been doing a lot of like inner work that has been like helping validate myself physically, emotionally, spiritually,
Mentally.
Mentally, I'm a little scattered, but that's only because there's been so much happening and I'm trying to anchor myself down on what it is that I'm doing. But it's not like disorganized, scattered. It's kind of like, all right, here's all these things that are going on. What should I focus on? So that's my check-in.
That's a great check-in.
Yeah.
I appreciate the honesty in it too. And I will follow your lead and I'll cover those same 4. Mentally, I'm feeling stimulated. I just started a new job and getting back to kind of more the technical side of things that I've done that a lot of people don't actually know about, which is kind of cool. It's been good. It's been a really good kind of comeback into the tech space. Physically, feeling strong. I, because of this new job, have had to regulate my sleep schedule, get that, kind of in more of a flow. Before it was a little bit chaotic and kind of messy, considering that I had nothing to really ground it into. So it's been nice to have kind of like a focal point to orient my sleep around, which is work hours, which has been good for me. Emotionally, feeling very calm, very calm. I think part of it is in sort of what we've talked about, getting that security back in place, related to getting in a job, getting into the swing of things. There's just this calm that's kind of come with that, which is bringing a relief, and it's making things very, very smooth these days. Spiritually, the word that comes to mind is grounded. I think I spent a lot of time exploring a variety of different spiritual modalities and practices. We've talked about that at length too. And where I'm at with so much of it now is it feels like there's like a culmination and an integration of so many of those different practices, and kind of just asking myself, like, how do I want to live with all the things that I've learned? How do I want to put them into a daily practice? So feeling grounded in that at this point. Ask me again tomorrow, might be a different answer.
Yeah, every day's different. That's
day.
what I kind of like about that. Like, it gives you 4 different pillars to check in on. And also, I just want to say same on that whole, like, I've done a lot of different practices, and now it's like I've kind of sharpened my sword in all those areas. So it's like synthesizing it. So I feel that on like the level of like calm.
Yeah. I think also maybe going to that men's circle must have been really powerful, anchoring in some of that too. So that's awesome.
Yeah, because like to speak on that a little bit, like I've just like recently spent time with my birth mother, and like have been really deep in the feminine like feelings with it, and like now it's time to like do the man thing, and I'm sure in this conversation I can speak more on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been time to like be seen and heard, and like to listen to other men too, because so much of the time spent as men is like behind a mask or behind closed doors, or how you doing? Good. How's it going? Fine. Oh, same shit, different circus type, like.
Yeah.
So it felt good last night to sit in that men's circle.
It's awesome. And without distracting too much and going too far into that tangent just now, I really like what you said earlier about being witnessed by other men. I think that there's something very powerful in that. So we could put a pin on it if we want to, get to more of that later. But I think it's really cool that you sat in that, and it's like you're facing yourself in many ways through the reflection of other men. People who are sharing some of your experience and also not sharing some of your experience, but it's being witnessed by people who can relate to you on that level. I think there's something to that.
I told, was it you? Maybe my mom. No, I told my mom. I was like, I have felt so lonely in some of the things I've been experiencing in the last year. And I've been trying to connect to all the other people I know exist that are lonely. So then I feel less lonely. And last night was kind of not even symbolic. It was so tangible to actually hear what these other strange men were doing too. Not strange, but stranger men were going through. And I'm like, oh my God, they all feel lonely in their thing, but we're all lonely together. So are we really alone?
Yeah.
So that was kind of a cool orientation to other people in the loneliness. And then also this is Layla. Layla's here. She doesn't have a mic.
Guest of honor, but you probably still hear her heavy breathing. It's not us, I promise.
Yeah, if you're only listening, you can see it on YouTube. Layla is a cute little fluffy soft dog. But yeah, we'll talk about Colombia.
So you just got back not too long ago.
Today's the 21st. I got back the morning of the 5th of February, 2022. No, this is 2023. Holy shit.
It's a whole new year.
There's a whole new year. Oh my God. Yeah, I went down for 10 days. The first time I went down was for 3-4 days. Yeah, I don't know where to begin. I guess maybe ask me a question, see what Yeah.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, this was your first time going solo. The last time you had people with you. So just right off the bat, between then and now, I guess, what was that experience like? The difference going solo versus having people that, are known for a long time, more familiar. What was that like for you?
Yo, honestly, going down solo, before, a little anxious and nervous because of, one, the language, two, do I have all my credentials correct? Did I check in? Do I have a COVID vaccine? What do I need to get into this country and out of America? So before, a little nervous. Once I actually landed and got through security and TSA, which was a breeze. I arrived at I think maybe 11 or 12 a.m. or 11 p.m., 12 a.m. Nobody was in the TSA line. I got through in 2 minutes. They asked me in Spanish, all the questions. I answered. I knew what they were saying, because that was the part I was most worried about. I'm I'm going to stutter or sound stupid. And my card says I'm born in Colombia, but I'm American. So are they going to think I'm a drug smuggler or something? But I made it through. And then once I got to the hotel, that's when I felt really I did it. I posted a story clapping. I was I fucking did it. I'm fucking here in Colombia. And that was a moment I was just so happy, because all the nervous part was gone. And I'm I made it. I can do it.
Yeah.
And something I realized after I did it, I was this is my first voyage back solo. I'm going to do this the rest of my life. And now I know I can do it. So that's how that felt.
I mean, it's like an initiation, So your first time doing something, going into a not new land, obviously, but it's just the experience of returning to your birthland without that support, without the familiar faces trekking with you along the way. That's awesome. Yeah. And I'm so glad it all went smoothly. There were no issues. Your Spanish has gotten amazing. We had a little Spanish check-in, and I'm impressed. So thank you. I know you've been practicing, and I'm sure that really came in handy throughout this whole experience.
Yeah, I that's kind of a cool random side effect. And so I found my birth family 2 years ago. I kind of was teaching myself Spanish maybe 6 months after finding them. Then I got a tutor maybe 6 months before going to Colombia this last time, but that tutor helped me so much. Her name's Sandy. And what's cool about learning a little bit every week or every month is once you're actually there and you have to put it to the test, one, leading up to it, it's oh my God, I've learned so much, and now what do I actually know? But then after 10 days coming back home, I'm my brain elasticity is a real thing.
Yeah.
I'm actually a computer inputting information, and I'm able to output it after sitting with it for so long. And that was really cool to actually feel my brain working in another language and like also trying to present my thoughts to my family, but I'm probably sounding like a 6-year-old doing it, like a 8-year-old. So the language in itself was like, that's a fucking cool thing to be able to recognize happening. Like, oh my God, I've been learning it and it's working. And then like harvesting the fruits of my labor, actually communicating with my birth family and getting answers and like sharing my experience in America with them in the Spanish language. That was rewarding as fuck. So that's like a little like side like accomplishment that's like at the forefront, but like it's still yeah, it feels huge. Good. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. It's not a small, it's a huge victory.
Yeah.
You know, it's you're able to connect with your blood in a whole other way. So if I may ask a question.
Yeah.
I kind of just want to hear about like the timeline of events. So you get there. Did you see the family right away? Did you take some time? Did you need to like explore a little bit, kind of shake off some additional nerves? I guess, what did that look like, you know, as soon as you landed?
Yeah. So I landed like really late at night, early morning. And then I was in the hotel all hyped. And then I fell asleep, woke up, had breakfast at the hotel. And I had like a driver down there who's like a friend. He's like the driver of a friend of my dad's. And like, maybe I should talk about him in this podcast because he's like an important part of the story. But that driver met me at the hotel like early in the morning so we could beat Bogota traffic. Because if you ever go to Colombia, Bogota has terrible traffic. Like terrible, like worse than Chicago, like probably worse than most places in America. I don't know. I've never been to LA. I've heard that traffic
pretty
sucks.
rough.
But so the driver picked me up. His name is Juan. And like, I haven't even really talked about that part of the experience with anybody, but like Juan is such like a genuine man, and he's so grateful for like the person that employs him and like all the opportunities been given by this man. His name's Ivan, the friend of my dad who lives down there. He's kind of been like my point of contact when I'm down there. But Juan is his driver, and me and Juan shared like a 45-minute long car ride to my sister's house in Kennedy, Colombia. And I brought these translator earbuds too, so because like just in case, you know, like at some point my brain doesn't work, like I need to know what's going on. So I gave him the earbud, and I had an earbud, and that whole car ride down was like a genuine heart to heart. Like he's like, I'll always drive you whenever you need, like all the time you come down here, like I'll always be here for you, and like I love your story, and I'm like, you're amazing, like I trust you, and like like all the things. And like by the end of it, this is good actually, we're talking about this because this sets up what things that were happening down there. But I had intended to meet my birth father down in this trip to Colombia. So I was telling him that. I was telling Juan that. And, like, as I'm telling him that, like, once I'm physically down in Colombia, my American life is in the back of my mind. When I'm here in America, my Colombia life is in the back of my mind. So it flipped when I was down there. When I was telling Juan about potentially meeting my birth father, I started thinking about my dad in America. And I'm starting to cry, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be another emotional goddamn trip. But it was so beautiful because like there was so many moments like that throughout the whole trip where I was able to like remember my American life and like family and like everything that got me to that point. So I had a lot of moments that just like cut through everything in Colombia, and I was like, oh yeah, like I got a whole family in America. Like I got like, there was so many moments like that I'm hopefully get brought up.
Yeah,
naturally.
I mean, it's so interesting. It's like you're permanently living in two worlds.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
When you're here, part of you is there. When you're there, part of you is here.
Mm-hmm. Do
you think that's ever gonna kind of like balance out in a way where it doesn't feel like?
No. I don't think so. Because it's funny, not funny. It's you're hitting the mark on the head. You're like picking up on something that's so true for us adoptees, and I didn't realize it till I was told it by my adoption counselor, Amy Wilkerson. Also goes by Grow Heal Blossom on Instagram. I'll link her in the comments because she's been a huge help in helping me like navigate this and other things in my life. But she said that us as adoptees exist in two worlds. And maybe like a couple more worlds depending on your situation. But like for my situation, I found my birth family in Colombia, and then I exist in an American family. And like, for example, the two worlds could be like, I'm Latino in an Irish family, but my Irish family doesn't recognize me as Latino. So I'm kind of in this world of like, okay, I'm Hispanic and Latino, but in this family, I'm just John Irish, you know, like I'm not being seen that way. And then when I go down to Colombia, I'm automatically Colombian, but they don't understand that I'm like American. I have Irish like heritage in me. And then like that kind of concept of being between two worlds goes for like the language or the food or the upbringing or like the values. And I would like to think it's going to mesh one day. And like, I don't want to like live through my children or something like that. But I feel like what might happen is like, if I have children and I bring them down to Colombia, like they can be the ones to like start off like at the beginning, like speaking the language, knowing their country of like origin, and like also being in America, like having it be a normal thing where I'm just like, this is what Colombia is about. Oh my God. Or like, I don't know if I identify with this American stuff. Like there's like, I don't think it's ever going to go away.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I appreciate your honesty in that too. Cause I can only imagine what that's like. You know, I do have a small taste of what it's like to be living in two worlds. I was born in Pakistan, but I live in the US. When I'm here, I don't feel American enough. When I'm there, I don't feel Pakistani enough. And so I can understand like one layer to that, but then adding the dimension of like being born in one world, being adopted by another family, being raised into that tradition, carrying multiple layers of identity, right? You're American and you're carrying Irish, you know, heritage, and you're Colombian by blood, and you have the Colombian heritage that you're now like reclaiming almost retroactively. So I think just having that vision of setting up your future children in such a way where it's like they don't have to kind of take what might feel like steps backward to sort of go back and reclaim that. It's like you're going to set them with that foundation. They could start with that and begin their consciousness in that immersion so that it doesn't feel a bit like being an imposter, which is, I know, something we talked about the first time around, like what, you know, that experience of, you know, maybe having some imposter syndrome, being like, am I American enough? Am I Colombian enough? Am I Irish enough? You know, it's a lot. So thank you for sharing that.
That's a great question. And like, even when I'm like documenting this stuff, like I honestly now lately, especially after the breakup, like thinking about relationships and like, what am I doing here on earth? Like, these documentations are a way for me to like orient myself to what's going on in the moment, but also like I will probably look back on this stuff if I have children and like I'll be like, look, you could like listen to the podcast from 20 years ago and see what was going on actually at the time. Yeah. Or like, here's the video of the moment that I met your grandma, or like, here's like all of this. This is our history, you know? So there is like, I'm doing so much healing and discovering, and like, you're right. Like if I'm blessed with children and I'm able to do that in my lifetime, like I can only hope that they one day can recognize like, wow, like this is where we come from. That's a crazy way we got back here, you know? Because like for me, it's like, I didn't know it was possible until we found my birth family. I didn't even know if we were going to find my birth family. And now we found them, and now like, it's like a whole universe is just like opened up. It's especially amazing. While you learn the language, you're like, once you get the language more and more down, you're like, oh my God, I can travel now. Like I can go to a whole different culture.
A whole world opens up for you.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. We were driving in the car through the Amazon, and I was like, I'm on another part of the planet. Even the moon that was like rising was like shaped like in like a different position. I was like, holy fuck, like what? I'm not in America no more. Like,
it's a different hemisphere.
Yeah, I was like, I'm in the south part of the globe right now.
It's warm here.
Yeah, warm. Oh, the mosquitoes are terrible. Oh my God, the worst mosquitoes I've ever experienced in my life.
I got a taste of that in Brazil, and they do not mess around. They do not.
Terrible. No,
but I really, really love what you said, and also just that comment about kind of like having a digital record too. It's amazing that you might
stall.
Zazu.
We got a bird hooting at us.
Yeah.
Tweeting.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot to say.
Just like that.
Yeah. Good impersonation of Zazu.
Thank you.
But no, it's incredible that you'll be able to kind of like, you can leave this record of your life behind. You know, you immortalize your story, you immortalize your experience, you make it so tangible that, you know, so many times we hear stories of like our ancestors, and like our parents and grandparents, and it's like, oh, I wish I could have been that, you know, in that time. I wish I could have relived that and gotten a taste of it. You're creating that. How amazing. That's so trippy. So cool. I'm glad you're doing this.
It's so real. Yeah. A good moment that I could share that relates back to like thinking about my birth father and breaking down. Not even breaking down in a bad way, just like feeling it, because there's been so much feeling in all this, is like I had a moment this is going out of the timeline of it all, but I had a moment where I was like kind of having breakfast with my whole Colombian family. It was like day 4 or 5, so we were already in the flow of things, and I get a phone call. I went down for my 29th birthday. I should probably go chronologically, but I'll just share this point. My grandma in America, we call her Nana. She's Nana. She's not grandma. She's Nana. She FaceTimes me on accident. She thought she was phone calling me. I just start crying. I'm like, because I'm so in the Colombia experience in the moment, but then my Nana calls me. She has an Irish accent and everything, and like, I'm like, this is my abuela. Like showing everybody, like, it was kind of cool to bridge those two worlds in that moment, and like they got to see. I'm like, this is my abuela. Like, you know, like I'm connected to our grandma, but like this is my abuela, and I was crying. I had to take a moment, step outside, and like those are like the moments like I can't even like transcribe to people when I come back, or like sometimes I told somebody like, yeah, my grandma called me and I cried, and like I don't know if people can grasp it unless you live it, and like I am just so grateful, and there's always been love around me, and like Nana. So like I came back and I hung out with my Nana yesterday, 2 days ago, and like I just have those moments now where like that's my ancestor. Like my Nana's my ancestor. I'm walking around with her in the mall. She's holding my arm and shit, and like I'm like, this is my ancestor right here. Like I'm just so grateful.
That's a beautiful thing, and you were able to share that with your blood family. Mm-hmm. You know, I can imagine the emotions that came up with that. That's huge.
It was beautiful.
So to get back to the timeline.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I don't mean to, take away from such a beautiful moment, but I think I want to add to that and get deeper into the core. So one thing I do kind of want to put a mental bookmark on is the reference to your birth father. It sounds like you did not end up meeting with him, but we'll get to that eventually. So you have this beautiful heart-to-heart with Juan and John.
Yeah. Yep.
And then what happens?
So then he drops me off at my sister's house, and then she's not there at first. She in my sister's house, there's my aunt, 2 nephews, my sister, my birth mother, and then like the husband, like not husband to my sister. So when I got there, it was only my aunt and my sobrino and my cousin. Actually, a cousin lives there too. So I was just kind of chilling with them, and like that's right when my Spanish had to come in play. I was like, oh God, I can't really speak to these people. So we're smiling, we're hugging, we're laughing, we're like, we're here. Then it was so cool because I was sitting there for like 10 minutes, and then my sister and birth mother like opened the door, and like when I see them, I'm like, ah, like there was no crying actually this time. It was just like, yeah, like fuck yeah, we fucking here. And like my birth mother, for people who might remember or not, like she has a mental illnesses like bipolar schizoaffective disorder, so she's both bipolar and schizophrenic, but not like to the extreme. So she's still present. Like every time I interacted with her down there, she was very like with me. She understood me. I didn't really understand her much because she kind of speaks slow and like she doesn't really repeat herself. She's kind of just like, but she's in it. Yeah. So that was what happened that day. And that day what we did was they took me to the city of Bogota, like kind of like the touristy parts. We saw like a really big like cathedral that's like the plaza. We tried some street food. We saw a couple street fights. That was a cool moment. I'll share that moment. But there was like this street fight happening, and like it was between 2 like girls, like maybe teenage age girls, and while this is happening, everybody on the street is watching this fight like it's like the center of attention. Like everybody's stopping and is just watching. There's no like, just keep walking. Everybody, it's like nobody has anything else better to do. But what was like a fever dream, there's this man with no arms playing piano with his feet and singing so beautifully while this fight is happening. And I'm looking at both of these things occurring at once, and I'm like, this is a different fucking country. Like this happens in America, but like, what am I experiencing right now?
The duality of such a moment, right? You have this beautiful demonstration and then this violent demonstration.
That was day 1, what we did. And that was nice because like we didn't stay in like the barrio. We got to go experience the city. Oh, yeah. So then we're leaving the city and we're taking the train to go back to my sister's at night, or the bus. This was another, like, I'm in another country right now. This man was like hobbling on these like, what is it called when you break your legs? Stilts? Not stilts.
Prosthetics?
Prosthetics? No, he didn't even
Crutches?
have prosthetics. Crutches. Yeah.
Crutches.
He was on crutches, and he's a beggar. He's like on these crutches, and I see him going around. But then once he gets like in front of my face, like super close, like there's no like concept of space in Colombia. This man like appears in my face. He has one eye. His one eye that's remaining is like fucked up. his face has bruises and cuts. Like his ears are chopped off. He has like bandages on his arm. He doesn't have one leg. Like he just looks like he got mutilated. I'm like, this man got fucked up by the cartel or some shit.
Oh my
and like,
God.
It didn't scare me because like I'm like I've seen like kind of this reality in Chicago a little bit with homeless people, but never to the extent of mutilation. Like I've seen like diseased legs and bloated legs and flesh that's been open, but like this was like it looks like you got into trouble in life and you got fucked up by somebody. So that was a moment of like there is a different danger that exists down here. Like this man is begging for money, but he's missing limbs and functioning body parts.
Wow.
I felt terribly for him, but it was almost like a moment that would have appeared in like a nightmare. Like it was like, that's what he kind of looked like to me. It didn't scare me, but like when I think back of it, I'm like, I could have mistaken that for a dream, you know, like a nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, it's a terrifying image, and it's actually, sadly, this is one thing I can relate to you on is in Pakistan, it's very, very common that you'll see people in a really mutilated state also begging. And it's actually really messed up down there. They have like this, like a begging mafia where people who are criminals will abduct young humans, children, and destroy them and then throw them on the street for the purposes of begging. There have been documentaries on this. So
really,
it's messed up. Yes.
Oh my God.
It's horrible. I'm sorry that you had to see that too.
It just, I don't know like why I was shown that, you know, like I don't know why that happened. And it's weird that I'm sharing it. It's not weird, but it's just like, yeah.
Well, it affected you somehow.
Yeah, it affected me. Like it kind of made me realize I'm like, this is like, there's different type of danger down here. Because even when I was walking in the streets by myself in Colombia, I would get too close to somebody and they would look back at me as if I was trying to pickpocket them. So like when I saw the locals looking at me like I was a threat, I'm like, I need to be like on my toes here. Like, and I kind of was, you know, like everywhere I went, I had my hands in my pockets and I was wearing pockets that were like lower on my legs and had my valuables there. Cause I was like, I don't want nobody fucking with me. Cause most of the time I was wearing chanclas like Crocs down there and I couldn't run if I even tried. So yeah, there's a different danger.
Yeah. In that moment, did you feel like a deeper sense of gratitude for the life that you have here?
Yeah. Like the street, like atmosphere and environment did bring some gratitude, but it was more like the spaces I found myself like inhabiting. Like my sister's home, like it like houses them and like they have water and kind of, I mean, the first 2 days we actually didn't have any like running water. Like that was like interesting. I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then like a lot of like floors are not finished. Walls are like have bugs crawling up them. Like the ceiling is like panels that you have to move like if it rains, and like there's just a lot of like different luxuries in America that are not consistent down in Colombia, because like some houses did, but then like, yeah, honestly, it's kind of, there was no toilet paper a lot of the times. Like I would go into bathrooms, there's no toilet paper. I'm like, I guess I'm not shitting today. Like, I guess like I held in my shit for, it's so weird to talk about, but that was like a big thing. Like I told my family, I'm like, what's going on down here? Like at some point I'm like, I can't hold this in anymore. And I bought my own toilet paper and I brought it back and I'm like, what the fuck's going on down here? Like, are we just not wiping? Like, but like that was like such like a
culture shock,
as well as I'm like, is it a money thing or is it like, are we just like not thinking about cleaning down there? Or like, what is it? Like, and I was afraid to ask because I'm not trying to be like, you guys have no toilet paper. Like, what are we going to do? And that's something like that made me feel like, I'm like, I got so much privilege, like to be like, where the fuck is the toilet paper? But maybe it's like, we don't have the budget for toilet paper, or like, I don't know. That was like, it's a funny thing to share, but it was a real thing I was experiencing. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I mean, it's funny in theory, right? But it's a reality that maybe if you were living in the same environment, if you were raised in that same environment, if you had that experience of like growing up in that, it wouldn't be something that stands out to you. It would just be a normal part of the day-to-day life. And because you're able to juxtapose that with your experience here, it stood out. It had some kind of impact where you're like, what is that? You didn't use the bathroom for days.
Yeah. Oh my God. I was like, I can't eat no more. Like, I don't know where to go with this. That's such a good way you put it though, to juxtapose. Like, because it did, that's such a good way of putting it. It stood out to me. Because like, yeah, it happened, but it stood out. Yeah.
What else stood out?
So what else stood out to me was, well, I'll try to go in timeline order.
Yes, good idea.
So got to my sister's, saw the city. And then the next day was my birthday. Actually, yeah, we'll talk about my birthday because like I went down for my golden birthday. I turned 29 on the 29th of January. And this was a big day. And like, okay, this is what I was talking about before the podcast. How personal do I get? So I brought up that I maybe would have met my birth father. It ended up not happening. But how do I navigate this? I have two uncles. One uncle promised me that it would happen. So that's the uncle I reached out when I was in Colombia. Like, hey, like, how are we going to make this happen? Let's make this happen. What do we got to do? Once I asked him while I was actually down there, like kind of crickets. And then he's like, ask your uncle, other uncle. I don't know. So that hurt. I was like mad, and I wasn't like upset that I was mad. Usually I'd be like, oh, it's whatever. Like, but I was actually mad at that. Cause I was like, I just spent since May thinking about a birth father, preparing to meet my birth father, and now you're telling me you don't have information about him. So I lost trust with that uncle, like a lot of trust. But my other uncle does know information. So the morning of my birthday, that uncle shows up, and he doesn't, okay. Before he shows up, I talked to my older sister about my birth father situation because I need to let her know that I might meet him this trip while I'm down here. And like, that's going to be a big thing. And I don't want to just blindside her with that. We have different birth fathers, by the way. Mm-hmm. All of us have different birth fathers. So me and her come up with a plan to see if this uncle actually knows who he is, because I later learned in that conversation with her that she had met my birth father at one point and like even lived with him, I guess, or like the suspected birth father. And she knew his name, Fernando. So that was like, it was like for any adoptee listening or someone who's been through this or like someone who might go through this, when you get like an information like that, it shakes your whole body. Like it's almost like your body takes a screenshot. It's like, whoa. Like when she said Fernando, 29 years of thinking about what is this man's name or what does he look like? Like now I have a name. Yeah. Like now I have a name, Fernando. So we came up with the plan of like, okay, we're not going to let, cause there's drama between this uncle and my sister, like heavy drama, like deeply rooted drama because of me. He was the one who took me from my birth mother.
Oh, okay. This is your maternal uncle.
Yes. And so like these are vital things I have to share because like it's such actual tension between them. And then like I just get thrown into it because I'm back in the family. Woohoo.
Yeah. So this tension's been going on pretty much this whole time?
Yeah.
Wow. And
like he doesn't come around. He does the last time he came around to the family functions was the last time I was there.
Wow.
So
this is like deep.
Yeah, deep shit.
Yeah.
Like when he took me from my birth family, it was out of love, and it was because like my birth mother was unable to take care of me, but he did it, and I learned all this last trip down there. He did this without the counsel of my other aunts and my other uncles and everybody involved that they wanted to keep me.
Yeah. He made the executive decision.
Yeah. Which made him an outcast forever for the rest of the family. For the most part, like I guess he would come around a little bit here and there, but he lived 27 years of regret and shame. And he shows up the morning of my birthday and we got to talk about it. And I'm going in investigator mode to figure out if he actually knows the birth father's name. He would dodge around it so much. Like, I'm like trying to ask him like, okay, what about my birth father? And he'd be like, oh, like, and then go off on a tangent somewhere else. And I would let him go on the tangent, but then I'd bring him back. I'm like, but what's my birth father's name? Because I'm like, if he knows this, then like, there's like some hope. And he sits there, like, after I ask him for like the millionth time, and he's like, I know where he is. I know who he is. His name's Fernando. And like when he said the name Fernando, I started breaking down. I'm like, he's got the earbuds in too. So like I'm actually having a good conversation with him. I'm so glad we're talking about this because like it's piecing it all together.
Yeah.
He says the name. I start breaking down. He starts crying. I'm crying. And this is a moment where I feel like this is like kind of like a men's circle, but with my lineage, my man, like my uncle. Like as I'm crying with him, I'm realizing in that moment, I'm like, we're healing. You've lived a life of like shame and regret. I've lived a life of like disconnection and no answers, and now we're healing. And like I remember when we were done talking about it all, we hugged each other for like what felt like 5 minutes, but it was probably more like 40 seconds, which is a long hug to give like your uncle who's a stranger. And it's weird because like now the other uncle I lost trust in was the uncle I was close with, but now I'm like arm's length. And now this uncle, I'm like, okay, it's me and you, bud. Like we're gonna figure this out together. I don't care if you're outcasted from the family. Like that hurts, that sucks, but like I'm still with you. Like because like my life in America is because of you.
Yeah.
So that was the morning of my birthday. Learned that my uncle knows my birth father's name. I guess Fernando is the maybe birth father. And that whole day was cool. Like in between all of these stories, like I'm walking in the streets of Colombia. I'm like taking in the culture. I'm breathing the air. It's sunny. Like I'm hearing the music I hear on Colombian or like playlist on Spotify, but actually in the streets of Colombia. And that's cool because I'm like, oh my God, I know this song. And like people are singing and dancing and like people are just kind of chilling. Like there's nothing much to do down there other than like drink, eat. Like people are playing soccer. There's a lot of soccer fields down there. Football, Lo Siento. But yeah, then my birthday night was beautiful because
well, you started the day with such a healing moment.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Definitely. And after that conversation, I remember like did I say it on the podcast? I don't know if I did, but my therapist before told me, the counselor, like give yourself the space. Like when you're down in Colombia, remember that there's a little boy inside of you trying to heal. Like give yourself that space while you're down there. And like after that conversation with my uncle, I remember like walking out front and like getting away from everybody and going out into the streets by myself and like just walking for a second and like giving myself the space of like, oh my God, okay.
I have a name.
Yeah, there's a name for a birth father, and I just cried with my uncle. I hugged him and like, all right.
27 years of healing, no big deal. Like
yeah. I'm just orienting myself.
I'm like emotional hearing this.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
God.
like real and like it's so like happening in the moment the whole time I'm down there. But my birthday evening was beautiful because like so much happened, but like I don't have to get into detail. But like another moment that broke me down, that maybe like I hope adoptees who find their birth family or hope to find their birth family can do this one day. But I guess I've seen it. A lot of Colombians celebrate birthdays this way, but like they'll set up a table, put a cake on it, you stand there, you got balloons behind you, and everybody circles around and everybody sings. And like just happy birthday. And they were singing in English actually, which was kind of weird, but like with a little Spanish like flavor. So that was kind of weird. But they sang happy birthday like 3 times. And my cousin's a guitar player, Edgar, and he was like, he's a pretty good singer, and he just like starts strumming while everybody's talking, like chattering, and then like everybody just sinks in like the same moment he starts singing. And that was really like, I'm like, oh my God, this is like a choir. And I'm like having this moment of just like scanning the room, looking at all these faces, singing passionately at me. And my uncle, the one that I healed with earlier in the morning, was like the most passionate, like damn near like animated to where like I was like, I can't look at him, I'm gonna laugh. Like but what happened was like by the 2nd or 3rd birthday, I started like crying. Like I'm just crying all the time down here. Like but I was just crying because I'm like, this is my family. Like this is my fucking family. And like when you have so many birthdays without your family, and they're finally singing happy birthday to you, that was a moment where I was like, I get to celebrate my life with the people that share my DNA. And like somebody else said it to me. They were like, maybe they sing happy or 3 birthdays to you because they're making up for lost time. And I'm like, I didn't even think of it that way. I think everybody was just excited. But and I was crying like this when it was happening. And like at the end of the birthday songs, my sister was like, words, like say words. And I started to be all like, my whole life, and like, but I was like, I can't do it. You guys understand. You guys know what I've been through. Like, I just love all of you. But that was like such a healing moment because of just what it is, you know, like to be sung happy birthday so passionately by these people. I don't know how to describe it. And like, it was just beautiful because I'm like, I'm finally here. Like, we did it. Like, I'm here. It was fucking crazy. Like, yeah, I don't even know how to put words to that moment. I think it was just scanning the room and looking at everybody's face, singing at me, clapping, and like, I don't know, because it was happiness, but it was also like, there's the bittersweetness of it all, you know? Like, fuck, like I lived a whole life that you guys will never understand, and like I won't even be able to like fully communicate to that my birth mom. Yeah, it's just like bittersweet, man. Like,
I mean, it's a really complex range of emotions, John. Like you gotta be gentle with yourself too, because like, holy shit, you got me. Oh my God, I mean, that's the thing about happiness. There's almost always this duality with it, especially in an experience so unique like the one that you've had. There's the joy, like, wow, this is happening. These people are singing passionately to me. And I feel the love they have for me. And I know that they love me. And what am I going to do with also the last 27 years of feeling like the emptiness? You know? It's big.
Woo, it's massive. It's massive. And like, true, there is loneliness. What's also true is like there wasn't loneliness. And that's another thing, like, for example, with the Nana situation, when she called, like, I have a family and I love that family. And I think that's part of the bittersweetness of it, is because like, how do I want to word this? Like, my family in America, I love so deeply in such a different way. And it's because, like, I have shared life with them. Yeah. And that was one thing I told my siblings, like, the night before I left, I, like, went in the room we were all chilling in. I was like, nothing can take away our childhood. Like, we've grown up together. Like, you guys know me more than most people on this planet. Like, you guys, like, we're siblings, you know? And that's, like, that's not even bittersweet, but that's just real. That's raw. Like, I'm like, we grew up together. I come from Chicago, like suburbs, like not Chicago, the hood or anything, but like, I come from the suburbs of Chicago. I'm a McCormick. And like, when I'm down there getting sung to by my Colombian family, I do have thoughts of like, fuck, like, how is this occurring in my American family where I can be more grateful, you know? Because I think what has happened recently with the reconnection is there's this like overshadow of like, so much celebration of the Colombian family, and like I do my best to like remain like really grateful and positive with the American family, because it is between two worlds, you know. You want to be able to be like, yeah, I found my birth family, but like I'm obviously still in this family. Like, I don't know. Is
it a feeling like, will I have enough love to pour on both ends, or will enough love be received on both ends?
I think there's like, because my counselor said perfectly, she's like, just like a mom who has many children can love her children the same amount but in different ways. I'm like, she's like, same thing with your families. And I'm like, that's true. And that was good to hear, because like, it's very true. Yeah. I just think there's like, I am living such a goddamn real experience that cannot be like downloaded into somebody else's like awareness. So it's hard to like bring up what I'm experiencing without someone having lived it. And there's also the sensitivity of like, because my family has kind of shared this a little bit, like I won't get too deep into it, but like a little bit of an envy of watching me become so close to my Colombian family just out of nowhere. Because the Colombian family to my adoptive family is like strangers, you know, and they're kind of strangers to me too in a way. But I know it's been hard for some people in my family to like witness what's happening. They're obviously happy. Like, I don't want to like glaze over that. Everybody's cried with me along in this process of like finding my birth family. Like, when I cry, they cry. But there is like work to be done to learn how to communicate about it, which is maybe a good thing for anybody that's listening. Like, be prepared to have the dynamic of how you express yourself and like the stories. Like, be prepared for some turbulence, because it might be beautiful for you, but there's people that have raised you, or like, because I guess with one of my sisters, she told me like, it's hard to hear you call somebody else sister. So like that type of stuff is like, doesn't occur to me. And I know that happens in all directions, you know, like there's things that don't occur to my family that occur for me. So that's something to be aware of if you are trying to do this similar thing as I have done.
I think a lot of what you're touching on is just revealing like the range of complexity of emotions that comes up, not just for you, but everyone who's connected to you, your family here, your family there, yourself, your friends, your loved ones, just anyone who gets to be a part of your journey in whatever capacity, like they're along for the ride, you know, and the people that you're connected to either by blood or by just life, I can understand where both of you would be coming from, where I could see from her perspective, like, I've lived an entire lifetime with you. I'm your sister. How can you say the word sister? And then it opens the door. What does it mean for someone to be a sister? Is it someone who's bound to you by blood? Is it someone who's been with you for your entire life? Can it be both? There's complexity in all of it. And I think there's no like one-dimensional answer for anybody involved. It is a can of worms, right? It's Pandora's box. There's all kinds of stuff coming up that maybe you never anticipated. Like, I mean, that's a question for you. Did you anticipate like some of this complexity? Did you foresee it coming, or is it the kind of thing that only really made sense and materialized once it physically became real?
I anticipated it, but I haven't even learned how to navigate it yet.
Yeah.
Because I'm still so fresh from this last trip. But that's what I read in the Primal Wound book, was like, there's the triad, the birth, there's the adoptee, the adoptive family, and then the birth family. And like each of them has like their own experience. So I've anticipated it, but now it's like, got to figure it out. And I like what you, right? I don't want to say like what you said has kind of shifted my perspective just right now in the moment. Because I'm always thinking about like, what does it mean to be a brother, a son, and now like an uncle or a cousin, or like, what does it mean to hold space in myself in these families? But like when you said, what does it mean to be a sister? It's like helping me like just now, like put myself in like my sister's positions, or like what I want to do is when I speak of my Colombian family, say the Spanish words. So like it can be separate.
Hermana.
Yeah, mi hermana. And don't say, or so people know what I'm talking about, like my Colombian sister. So there doesn't have to, because like I don't even like saying adoptive family.
Yeah.
Like they're my family. But for the sake of understanding from the outside looking in, like adoptive mom, adoptive dad, which feels gross. Yeah.
I think that's actually a really beautiful method, applying the language that's relevant to each family, you know? And then I think maybe that also might be easier to be received from your American family, understanding that I'm his sister, but so is she. I'm the sister and she's the hermana.
Yeah, right.
I really like that approach.
I like it too. It feels good. It feels like that's what it should be. And to kind of speak on something I've been like personally like trying to embody or step into, and like kind of already know because we spoke about the men's circle. But I had a moment like 3 nights ago where I was laying in my bed. I know I could just do better. As men and humans and women, like we all know we could do better. We want to do better by our standards, better by like so many different facets of life. And I'm laying in bed, and when I'm thinking about what I just did in Colombia, I already feel like I have a certain level of like, not foundation or structure, but like maybe stoicism or poise down in Colombia. Like when I'm down there, I feel like I'm like, yeah, I'm like the brother. Like I'm like, I can be a foundation in this family, you know, like I automatically have that. But when I'm in America, I have a whole life that has like followed me up to this point where I don't feel that sturdy. And like, I'm trying to like hold myself more accountable as a person and figure out what systems do I have in place? Like, how can I like fully embody this while also getting better and better and better? Because ultimately one day I would like to help out my family in Colombia, but not spread myself thin, whether it's financially or with time or energetically, or that's just been something I've been like, cause I'm 29 now. Like I'm trying to figure it out, you know, like no more like loose ends. Like
Hey,
be
man.
sturdy.
Saturn returns coming. You're going to be just fine.
Yeah. And it's cool because like I have to speak on it a little bit because it's been happening, but with the breakup, like you get tested on your foundations, and like I've just been trying to like double down where it works and like lay down a little different like pueblo when it comes to like what's going to work in the future.
Yeah. Something I wanted to kind of speak to, which I sort of processed from something you said. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
It sounds like your experience going to Colombia, you kind of get to redefine yourself in a way. Forgive the word choice. There's probably a better word for it, but you get to really establish like, who am I here? Who am I in this space? How do I show up here? And that entire 29-year life history of how people have seen you, how people have perceived you, how people have talked to you, interacted with you, how you've interacted with them. It's like that can kind of just dissolve a little bit. You go in with a bit of a blank slate. Has it felt like when you're there, it's like you're like more of a clean slate version of yourself?
I think when I'm down there, my ego comes to the forefront, to be
Say
honest.
more.
Like, and that's something like I've been like sitting with, because I'm like, why do I have this ego? Is it because I'm like American? Like, cause like even when I'm down there, like I look forward to being like, I'm from America. Like I look forward to saying that phrase. And I don't know what that stems from. Like, I don't know if it's because I want someone to look at me like, oh, that's cool. So, like, going down there, yes, there's a little bit of, like, a clean slate, but, like, there's, like, a darkness, not, like, a bad darkness, but there's, like, a little bit of ego that's showing up where I'm like, yeah, I'm the American family member, you know, when it should just be, like, I'm just here, you know, like, and, like, a lot of that has been that. Like, I'm not down there trying to be, like, flashy or, like, tell everybody, like, I'm from Chicago. Because I learned in a situation down there, like, don't tell people you're from America. They're going to try to use you. But there is, to speak on that, like, a level of, like, yeah, I've been going through so much transformation on, like, what it means to be John and, like, the identity of, like, me as a human being. Like, because the spiritual side of me is, like, none of this matters. But, like, in the actual, like, integration of it all, like, I don't know how to, like, come back to America and, like, be, like, able to communicate what just happened in the last 2 years of my life. Like, I have friends that still interact with me, and I feel like I'm still in high school. And I don't like that, you know, like cause like I don't feel that way at all when I'm by myself. But when you go through so much time with not interacting with people, and that's partially why I put out these things, so people can kind of get a sense of what's going on, you know, because like, yeah, I don't want there to have to be like just small surface talk when I'm like, I just figured out my birth father's name and I cried about it, you know? So yeah, there's a little bit of a clean slate, but like what I said, like there's always the American thing going on in the back of my mind. When I'm down there, I'm thinking about, I grew up playing baseball, or like I went to like grammar school and high school and college, and like I have all these, like those don't go away when I'm down there. Cause I think that's also like, that's like, just speaking on it out loud, this is kind of cool to talk about out loud. Like, that's where the ego stops. It's like, okay, I do have privilege. How can I, like, emphasize this when I come back down here the rest of my life and, like, help out?
Yeah.
Because it is tough down there. Like, I don't know about Pakistan, but, like, the money's not there. The opportunities aren't there. There's only, like, upper class and lower class.
Yeah.
So there's definitely opportunity for me to help. It's how do I do it in a way that doesn't make it seem like you guys need my help? More like, I want to help. How do we do this together? So yeah.
Thank you for the honesty. I'm just digesting because that was so real.
Yeah.
I'm not used to like people speaking so genuinely about an experience like that, and with such humility too. Like, I have a thought based on, are we still good? Sorry. I have a thought based on what you said about the ego thing. And again, you can confirm or deny. I'm just kind of like picking your brain and sort of reflecting things back as they come up. Is it that some of that feeling of like pride in your American life comes through as like this is something I'm proud of. I want you to be proud of me. Like there's something about me that makes me feel a sense of pride so that I feel proud to present myself to you. Is that something that maybe is in it? Also, apologies. I just went straight for it.
No, that's good. Because something came up, which is making me realize why maybe I have, like, I don't know if it's shame or guilt for this privilege, but mi hermana down there, my older sister, has kind of expressed a little bit of like shame herself about like her situation. She's like, my house is small, it's not clean. Like she said those things where like I feel like she is a little bit embarrassed, or maybe like in her eyes I come from like this like upper class type situation. So like when you asked me that I got reminded, I'm like, oh, I've felt some shame come from her direction. But I don't have much like be prideful in your American family member. And like, actually there's no like ego when I share some stories about America, because they're like, what's America like? I'm like, America's dope. Like we got a lot of cool nature. There's so many different cultures and food. Like the music's good most of the time. Like there's a lot of cool things about America. And like, I think there is just a hope that I can show them this world one day. It's extremely hard because of the visa situation, and like you got to be able to really prove that you're going there just to visit family. Yeah, that's my answer for that.
Oh, that's a good answer. Some of the stuff that's kind of just coming up based on my experience too is like, I've seen it in Pakistan where Americanness is seen as something to aspire to. So a lot of the youth, I was actually just joking about this with a few friends, and I don't mean to be rude. I mean, these are my own people, right? But a lot of the younger generation, when they're speaking Urdu, they're speaking it with like an American accent. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't, you don't have to do this, you know? And unfortunately, so many places, not just limited to Pakistan, Colombia, so many places that are in more of a developing state, or they've had political upheaval or social upheaval or economic upheaval, or they've been exploited by other nations and colonies for, you know, decades, thousands, hundreds of years. There's almost this feeling of inferiority that sometimes comes through. And that comes with the shame, where it's like, oh, if I want to be better, I have to be seen as more American because that's the gold standard to aspire to. And it's honestly such a tragic injustice. It's it's so frustrating because I feel like a lot of people who are in like just collective diaspora, living in other places from one place but not living there, feel this longing to return to home. And then so many of the people who are home feel this longing to go somewhere else because it's better. And I don't know, it felt important to share that. It's something that kind of came up as you were speaking. And if there's anything I could say and put out there for everyone, be proud of your roots. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of where you're from. Don't try to be anything else. Don't try to speak like anybody else. Your language, your heritage, your foods, your culture, your clothing, your dancing, your singing, it's sacred.
Man. Oh, I feel like I'm listening to myself talk. Oh my God, that's so real. It's so real. And like it reminds me of something I read in Malcolm X's autobiography about his like reality as an African American in America growing up. He was living in Detroit, and this was a time when I think he was selling drugs. But he was talking about in his autobiography that like he would try to be more white, because he was lighter skinned, and like he would like make his like hair less like coarse and like burn it, like, and it's such a good autobiography. It kind of helped me like wake up. I read it during the George Floyd stuff, but he spoke about not wanting to be black, so trying to make yourself more white, and that like hurt to look back on once he was more conscious and proud of his lineage. Like he was like, why was I trying to be more like the people that like aren't connected to anything? Like I should be proud of my hair. I should be proud of my culture, my color, of my skin. And like same thing down in Colombia a little bit. Like my sister mi hermana would like to move to America one day for better opportunities. And like I actually sold that to my Colombian family, where I'm like, America's great, but a lot of people don't have culture. Like I told them one time after we had like so many meals together, I'm like, we don't really do this every day. Like we're all kind of like alone, sparsed off. Like the family unit's not a unit. I echo that though so much. Like if you don't know about your culture, try to go visit like or like a restaurant in America, or like try to find a safe place to go in your like home country. 'Cause it's made my eyes wide open.
So I was, our roots are so rich, and all of us, doesn't matter how mixed you are, how removed you might be, how many generations might be between you and your ancestral lands, we all are indigenous to somewhere, right? Whether it's directly like our native population here, you know, the first nation American people, or people who are just several generations removed. We're all connected to something. We're all from somewhere. And I think there's so much power that comes through when we can just reclaim that and honor that and love that, celebrate it in ourselves, and really anchor in what it means to be a cultured being. You know, I do feel, just on a personal note, that there's so much missed opportunity here for people to connect with their roots, and we become this like homogenous, you know, body of humans. Like, yeah, we're American. What does that mean? Right. I mean, if you want to get really technical, to be American is to be indigenous to this land, right? And how much of that is represented in the world, right? How much of that has been wiped out? So then, okay, what does it mean to be American? To be part of the populations that came as colonizers.
Right.
Okay. What does that mean? Are you connected to that? To those, you know, British roots, to those Irish roots, which, not colonizers, different story. There's so much opportunity for us to renew our connection to our blood, to our lands, to our people, even if it's, you know, even if people don't speak the language of their people, even if people don't know anybody who's directly from the land that they're from, it's like you said, you could go to a restaurant, you can watch a film, you could read a book, you can watch a documentary, connect with who you are. It opens your eyes. And I think that's something that we would really benefit from seeing in the whole world, especially here, where it's a melting pot. It's a mixture of everyone from everywhere. How do we keep it sacred? How do we keep our roots intact? How do we keep our blood intact? Our stories, our histories, the things that make us who we are. So I just needed to, I had a feeling.
Yeah.
I wanted to share that.
It is sacred. And that's something I've said to people that like have a Caucasian background, you know, because like it's weird. Because when I had my DNA results come back, like there's something sexy about being indigenous, you know, like, and I don't know where that comes from. And like, I had to check myself when I saw the indigenous like result. I was like, oh, that's cool. But I'm like, why is that cool? Is that because we've been told it's exotic or rare? Like, and then like, there's that level of like, why is that cool? Like, it should be cool to be anything. And then there's the level of like, people who are of European descent have shame, and like, they think it's boring to be Polish or Irish or something like that. Where it's like, how do we work through our cultural shame? Because if we're disconnected from it, we don't know where to look.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've been back to Ireland, and Ireland's beautiful. The nature there is profound. It's damn near heaven. But yeah, I think that conversation is a deep one too, because if someone doesn't have that genuine interest to go back and like look into their history as a people or their family history, it's kind of hard to do the work.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it is. And thank you for naming that point of there is a shame that exists. It's like we were saying earlier that, you know, people who are living in certain countries feel ashamed that they're not American. Some people who have the, you know, Caucasian background, who maybe had colonizers in their lineage, feel ashamed for that. And it's tricky, right? It's very sensitive, and it's a tricky thing to navigate. And I think ultimately the way that healing is going to happen is when people of this time, of this generation, today, right now, can sit across from each other and just have a very real conversation about it, where we don't veil things in subtle forms of racism or obvious forms of racism, where we could have people from potentially opposing backgrounds, whatever that means. That's a man-made thing, right? Opposition, it's all man-made. If we could bring people together and honor the beauty and the unique diversity of each lineage, of each person, and offer that healing, something really powerful could happen. But to do that, it's like you said, you got to be willing to meet yourself at a certain level to go deep with yourself first, to heal something in yourself first, to acknowledge that shame is coming up. How many of us have had shame and haven't even acknowledged it? Why? Because it's big and it's scary and you don't know what's on the other side of that. What if I touch that box and then it opens up and now I'm drowning in shame? Well, you work through it, you know? Whatever comes up, you work through it. And if we could do that, not just individually, like, yeah, it always starts inside, right? The work begins internally. But what a powerful thing when we can heal in community and have those difficult conversations and own things. Like, there's something really powerful in the ability to have those forms of dialogue.
Yeah, I hope we can do that. I know we could do that. When you're talking about this, I'm thinking about like a conversation that happened once in my family, American family, where they said this phrase like, the Irish were slaves too, which is true. And like, it's hard because I think with that dialogue that might happen between people of different cultures, there's like, I've been hurt too. And then there's like I'm not going to worry about you because we've been hurt too. And then like, I think that's where a space exists.
Yes.
Where like it's hard to meet someone else when it's like, yeah, me too. Yeah. Because like someone could share their whole story and then like you don't even acknowledge it. You're like, same here, bud. And that's hard to like get people that aren't willing to admit that shame outright. Yeah. To like meet someone else with that.
You name a very solid point. I've seen that play out in a variety of different situations. And I think maybe some of what that comes down to is part of it is like we're wired for trauma bonding until we heal our shit, right? So if it's like I see someone suffering, well, I've suffered too. My suffering has been greater or my suffering has been equal. We're not here to compete with who has suffered more. We're not here to compete with whose suffering is more deserving of taking up space. Suffering is suffering. Being human is hard. It is not easy for anybody. Some people have more privileged lives. They're probably still suffering in some way or another. If we can look at another human suffering and not be threatened by the fact that another person's suffering is real and not feel like it somehow takes away from our suffering, we could connect and heal through that. Instead of, like you said, like, you know, putting up that distance, like, well, I've suffered too, so why should I care about yours? Well, you're a human and I'm a human and I don't like suffering and I don't like when you suffer. So how about we talk about that?
I like that. That's exactly what I was just thinking from that. Like when you were talking about it, I'm like, maybe we can enter these conversations like asking someone, how have you suffered? I'll tell you how I suffered, because that's almost like doing that whole like, I've suffered too, but in a way that invites the other person back in.
The nuance of language. Look at what we've discovered today.
Yeah, because it is like the validation in it all. You got to validate yourself, but like if you can validate somebody else through your own validation of self, that's a win-win.
Yeah. Also, when you approach it like that, when you pitch it exactly as you did, you're opening up the floor for a conversation and a dialogue, not a battle, not a competition. It is conversation. You're inviting someone's experience instead of assuming you know what it must be because you've had your own brand of suffering. Yeah. You're inviting that person.
Assumptions suck. Assumptions breed ignorance.
They do.
So bad.
Ooh. It's good.
The tea.
The tea. You need more?
I'll take some more. Sure.
I got you.
Thank you. Yeah. Man, we're solving racism in here. No, let me think. Let me reel it back into Colombia.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We got a little...
No, this is beautiful. This is great. This is what's cool about this. Like the flow of it, like this brings it beyond adoptees. This brings it beyond all that.
Well, we're touching on the human experience, right? Yeah. And no one's going to know what your experience is, but everyone knows what it means to be human.
Mm-hmm. Or disconnected from their culture or longing for their culture. Yeah.
So, all right, let me try to bring us back. I forget exactly where we... So, okay, we were talking about like... Birthday, yes. Big emotions. You had a moment in the evening with your uncle.
That was in the morning of the birthday. And then, so yeah, the night of the birthday, we actually left the suburbs where my sister lives, mi hermana, and we went to like a vacation town. It was almost like I liken it to like Fort Lauderdale. It was like the vacation town for Bogota people called Giradot. And that was cool. My aunt has like this home that like is like 3 stories. The 2 top floors aren't finished, but we all went there. It's kind of like, it's a warm town. It's like 85 degrees every day, like no rain, sunny, but kind of cloudy. Alive, noise all the time in the streets of Colombia. Like once like the sun's rising, like noise, street vendors galore. Yeah. Some things I did while we were in that space was we went to a water park that was in like the middle of the Amazon, and what was cool is a zoo was attached to, so I saw some like Amazonian animals like puma, was it a cougar or panther? Maybe a cougar. Boa constrictor, like not toucans, but some type of like birds with the big beaks and colors. And it was kind of cool because the bird cage had some inside, but then there were some wild ones that were like chilling on the outside of it. So that was kind of cool to see. Saw like poisonous frogs, saw like a lot of different types of birds and monkeys. Monos are so cute. Monos, there was like the cutest little monkeys that were like just jumping around everywhere, and they had like fierce little faces. So yeah, I like just want to say like I saw Amazonian animals. I was in like Amazonian like nature places. Another cool experience we had was my cousin, who's like kind of my same age. I think he's maybe like 33-ish. We went to like him and his like wife, who's not his wife's house, that was like surrounded by mango trees and coconut trees, and like they were just free. Like he was like primo, come with me, and like me, him, and my aunt like went to this mango tree, and he was picking mango trees, throwing them down to me. I collected maybe like, I think I counted like 25 mangoes. We brought it back. We made mango juice. That was a really cool moment because I'm like, honestly, my American family would not do this. Maybe my brother would like drink the drink with me, but like they'd probably think this is gross or something. But I'm like, this is dope. This is like the indigenous part of me was like, we're picking fruit off trees and we're drinking juice. I was like, let's do it. This is what we wanted. So that was beautiful. Another kind of cool thing that like thought was badass, honestly, and it showed me that I was in a different country through my aunt. I have this one aunt, Tia Julieta, and she's like probably like up to my shoulder on me, so she's like smaller, but she's like kind of fierce, like very like direct. I got a lot of answers from her. I actually got really close with this aunt. She gave me a lot of answers about my life. And then we were walking this like dangerous neighborhood of like close to Giradot, near like a fish market. Oh my God, I forgot about the fish market. I could talk about that too. So many different things. But there was like these dogs that were in this warehouse, and we walked by the warehouse, and I heard them barking when I walked by. But then when my aunt was walking by, they like came out and like started like being very threatening to her, and I was ready to like kick these dogs. Like I paused and I looked. I was like maybe, I can't like describe distance, maybe 10 feet from my aunt, but like we all stopped because these dogs were like big Rottweilers, like like. My aunt's on the phone, like not really paying attention, but she stopped. I could tell she noticed them. And she starts walking past them, and they start like biting her leg. I'm like, I'm running back, about to kick these dogs and punch them and like strangle them, do whatever jujitsu I know on them. But she just like hits one of the dogs on the head. They let go, and she keeps walking like nothing happened. And I'm like, my heart's going. I'm like patting her on the back. I'm like, that was so scary. Are you okay? And she's like, John, there's worse things in Colombia. And I'm like, you're badass. Like, what the fuck? Like, that was so scary for me. And you're just like, boop. What are we going to have for dinner? And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Awesome, Tia.
Yeah. So that was a moment where I was like, wow, like you've been hardened by whatever you've lived through. Yeah. That was scary for me. So that was a cool moment. Badass moment. I was trying to like find a word because there was no direct translation for badass. If anybody knows a word for badass in Colombian Spanish, let me know. Because I was like showing her, I'm like, badass. Like, and she's like, what? I'm like, confident. Like this. Like, so that was funny. Fish market. Fish market was really cool. We were off this river called Rio Magdalena, and there was a whole fish market, and all the fish that were being sold there were caught in this river, or like maybe downstream or in the forest. The jungle. It wasn't a forest, a jungle. That was like a movie set, but like real life. So many colors everywhere, so many smells, so many sights, so many noises, so much noise. And I remember we walked up to this one fish vendor, and like she had such good charisma and like such a good businesswoman. I didn't know what she was saying, but she was like looking at all of us in the eye, and like I could pick up, she was like, this is the best fish out here. You're not going to find this out there. This is the best fish. we ended up buying from her, but like when she's like chopping up the fish and everything, she's like small and dainty and like older, but she was just so like like fish, like this. So we ate catfish. I had this other food called like mohara. That was delicious. So much food. Oh my God. Go to Colombia and try all the food. There's so much food, from like breads to fishes to meats to soups to like so much goddamn good food. I gained weight. Like I think like it was good too, because I don't feed myself enough sometimes. And like down there I was fed. Yeah, there was like a Colombian soccer football tournament that was happening while I was down there. So one night Colombia was playing USA, and I was like, who do I root for? What else happened? Yeah, I wanted to like throw all that in there too, because it's like cool kind of like cultural things that were happening. Fish market, Colombia, football games. Food, seeing my aunt get bit by dogs.
And then a pat on the head, just solving the problem.
Mosquitoes were terrible. Yeah. Oh, here's something I wanted to bring up. Yes. Okay. Yes. In the Primal Wound, it talks about, and like, I believe it, because like the woman did studies on this and like case groups or whatever it's called, about how when you're born and then like you are like receiving actual physical information from your birth mother by like actual physical touch, like you're receiving information you need to develop as like a baby. I didn't get that, really. I was only with my birth family for 20 days. So when I went down to Colombia, I told myself, like, all right, remember that, and like whatever physical touch you get in this family, like be happy about it. So like there was times where I was sitting on laps. You actually commented on that in my story, but like I was sitting on laps in cars. Like I had to like put all my weight down. Like at first I was like really hesitant because I'm like, this is really intimate, but I like put my butt down on my aunt's lap and like had my sister sit on my lap, and like my nephew was like always touching me and stuff, or like cuddling up on me. But the last night when we were leaving the vacation town to go back to Bogota, my birth mother like was like sleeping, or I gave it away. She was sitting next to me, but then she ended up sleeping on me for like the last hour and a half. And there was like different points throughout her sleeping where like I put my arm around her for like 30 minutes, or like I put my head down and like she put her hand on my head, or like there was just so many different like physical touch moments with my birth mom. And at one point, like her skin was actually touching my skin. And I remember like feeling that, and I was like, I like slowed down and I just like closed my eyes and I just breathed the entire time I felt her skin. And that was like, what was important about this moment was like, I kind of knew when we got back to the home that she was probably going to wake up and go to the streets, because she loves the streets. And I was leaving that next morning. So I'm like, this is probably my last moments with my mom. So I'm going to like feel this skin to skin contact. And that was so healing. So healing. And I didn't realize it till like maybe like 3 days once I got back to America. Like I realized how chill I actually physically felt.
Wow.
Like I felt very like secure and safe, and like
nervous system.
Yeah.
Settles down.
So much regulation and like all that physical touch. So that's something like I would definitely be like sending a signal out for anybody that might be reconnecting with their birth family. Like feel into that. Like if you are around your biological family, maybe like see if you're recognizing any sense of like change in your body. Because I felt so peaceful. So very like, whew, I'm settled. Got that. I feel safe. I feel secure.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that was new too. And that's when someone asked me like, how was your vacation? I said this on my last podcast. I'll say it again. How was your vacation? I'm like, that wasn't a vacation. That was going home. So that was beautiful.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a vacation. It's a homecoming.
Yeah, exactly.
A second one in this case.
This one felt like legit.
Yeah, I mean, you really went all in with this experience. You went solo. You connected with the driver. You connected with your birth family. You had this amazing skin to skin moment with your mother that like, who knows like what you're, you know, forgive the word choice here, but maybe like something in your spirit was like starved for that.
Perfect word choice. Starved is like, yeah. Because leading up to all this, the first time I went and the second time I went, I'm like, you long for that. You long for it. I didn't realize I longed for it until like I thought about it. And I longed for it. So much of like, and this is like hard to say because like it might bring up things for my American family, but I gotta say it because like there's things in my life growing up in America that I wish I had, you know, like, because I would watch my siblings in America, like, kind of cuddle each other on the couch or, like, always be touchy, feely, and, like, I never really feel comfortable doing that with them just because, like, I was always an older brother and, like, I would do it a little bit. But I remember specifically one time, like, watching, like, my brother and my sister, like just, like, cuddle each other for a little bit. And I was like, I'm never going to have that. But then, like, I was down in Colombia and I had so much of that, like, actually, finally, like, and, like, it's weird to say the word finally because it's like, I was longing for it, like, finally.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and it was weird too because at one moment my nephew, like, he's like 5 years old. And at one point, like, me and him, like, played so much while we were down there. We, like, swam in a river and pool together and, like, just played with him so much because, like, I feel like he's maybe a little annoying to my family down there, but I'm like, let's have fun. But at one point, he, like, was on the couch on the other side, and he started, like, scooting towards me, like, slowly. And then at some point, he just, like, landed, like right here. Oh. I remember, like, you're so goddamn precious. Like, I'm like, this is so, like, you trust me this much? Like, this is so precious. And that was a moment where I'm like, I am your protector. Like, I am, like, your elder. Like, it was a weird moment, too. So... And through him, I feel like I'm playing with myself a little bit because he kind of looks like how I looked when I was a kid, and, like, he has this same, like, energy, and I'm like, you're kind of like me, bro.
Inner child healing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard when you're, like, trying to be, like, an adult to a kid that you can't speak the language to. Because one time the family dog ran away, and I went and caught it, and I brought it back. But then my, like, nephew came running, and he's like, give me the dog, like, I'll hold him. And, like, I didn't know how to say, like, no, I have the dog right now, like, in a forceful way in Spanish. And it was, like, a weird moment because I'm like, right now I need to, like, have my, like, nephew, like, listen to the situation, but I don't know how to describe. I'm like, no, this dog is more strong than you. I'm like, ya no tiene más fuerza. Like, more, like, I need to hold him. And, like, he was getting mad at me, my nephew, and I just, like, no. It was funny because, like, I accidentally called Chano the dog Charro. He's like, it's not Charro, it's Chano. And I was like, God damn it, I'm so stupid. But,
not
like,
stupid. Hey, you're, like, thinking in one language, translating in another, and you're also trying to, like, save the dog from escape, and also trying to manage the child who wants to, you know, it's a lot of things to juggle, John. Be gentle.
True. Thank you for that reminder. I think it's that standard you hold yourself to.
Yeah.
But that was, like, a moment because I was away from the rest of the family, and my nephew was just like, and I was like, oh my God, I can't talk to you. Yeah.
That's so interesting though. It's like, how do I present as, you know, not necessarily authoritarian, but, like, I am the elder here. I have to present as, like, a role model, as an authority, as this person who's in charge of the situation. And it's so hard to assert that when you're, like, mentally translating and handling a stressful situation.
Yeah. And I've been, like, playing with the kid most of the trip. So now I have to be like, no, like, right now you got to listen to me, even though I'm, like, kind of a stranger to you.
So many emotions. Oh my gosh. Like, just already, I feel like we've covered, like, 1,000 different emotions that have come up in such a charged experience. Yeah,
it was charged. And, like, I tried to journal while I was down there, but, like, it was kind of, like, just happening so much. And then I didn't, like, it all flooded back in when I came back to America. And, like, honestly, I was processing my breakup a lot too. And then, like, once I moved through a lot of the breakup, then a lot of the adoption stuff flooded in. Like, I finally had some space to actually, like, realize what just happened in my life. Yeah. And that, like, brought up a lot of emotions for me too. Cause I'm like, oh my God, I was like, I had to grieve this relationship, but, like, what if I didn't have the relationship to grieve? Well, like, I was, like, down there, like, what kind of space? But, like, I can't be mad. Like, it all happened for a reason. I'm trying to think. That kind of does, like, bring in a lot. I wanted to say that piece on the biological family, like, getting the physical touch. And then I've kind of said it throughout the podcast a little bit, but just validating yourself with where you're at is really helpful because, like, people are not going to understand what you're going through. And, like, you have to, like, figure out how to be like, right now I'm sad. Right now I'm anxious. Right now I'm this, just to, like, let yourself check in with yourself. Because my last couple days there, I didn't spend it with my family. I stayed in a hotel by myself. And, like, I had the uncle that I was distant with now reach out, like, trying to be like this uncle to me where he's like, let me take you around the city and show you all these places. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, my family took me here already. Like, you lied to me, like, and other stuff was going on with him that was really kind of weird and bizarre. But I like felt really good because I was told him, no, like I'm going to spend these last couple days by myself, do my own thing. No, like in a very respectful way. I'm like, it's been a lot for me this trip. I'm just going to be alone. But a younger version of myself would have been people pleasy. Like, yeah, I should hang out with my uncle. Like, he's my uncle. But this time I was like, no, like arm's length.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to. And I think also it's like, while yes, in the ideal world, we wouldn't have complicated emotions with all of our relatives, but like that's a thing that happens. And when it does happen, you're actually being more compassionate to everyone involved when you can be honest.
Yeah.
Because if you were to go ahead and do that out of a feeling of obligation, who knows what kind of resentment might come up,
True.
What might come through that resentment, what might lead to a bigger, unfolding that wouldn't be as comfortable to manage. So I think you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And I felt good too in that moment. I felt that too. And like, I remember looking at myself in the mirror of the hotel room, like, I'm proud of you, John. You said no to your uncle. Like, I said that to myself because like when you're living through such a big emotional thing, like you have those moments where you're just like, wow, this is really fucking happening. Or like, I remember looking at my hotel room, like looking at the city. I'm like, oh my God, this is where I'm from. Like there's moments where you have to take a deep breath and you're like, holy shit. Like, ugh.
It's a lot.
Yeah, like, oh my God. Like, it feels like the universe just like chews you up and like makes you a ball of gum and then spits you out, and then you're just left to like solidify in whatever shape it like made you, and you're like, oh my God, Jesus Christ.
I kind of love that description.
A wad of gum.
Wad of chewed up gum, spit out.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like sometimes. But in the most beautiful way, once you like, as long as you give yourself the space to like process and validate, and then like, I mean, like, I'm lucky that my family accepted me. Yeah. Like, very lucky with that. Ooh, that was...
Yeah, cool. It's on a timer. So here's a question for you.
Sure.
How much does the word surrender play into this entire adoption, reclaiming, birth family reconnection journey?
Well, first what comes up, right, when you said surrender, like, was my first trip. Because I remember I was trying to be, like, prepared to go there, but like things were happening in my personal life that were kind of like distracting me from it. And then like once we got down there, like at that time I didn't know the language really at all, and my friend that came to translate, like my parents and him held such good space for me, because like most of the time that first trip I was crying. Most like every car ride we took, everything we did, I was just like like everything was just like surrender. Yeah. Like, because I'm not one to be like, stop crying, bro. Like I'm the last like probably 10, 15 years of my life, I've been like, it's okay to be really emotional. So surrender from the first trip was just like, yeah, this is big. Just, you don't have to speak the language. Let your friends speak to you, or like let your parents choose where we're going to eat. Like none of this, like just be in your body, surrender to like what you're experiencing. And maybe this second time was like, I'm good at adapting, and like I think it's because of my experience in the music festival culture, because sometimes you're like in a music festival and like it's raining really bad and you're like really wet and like it kind of sucks, and like you just, it doesn't feel like physically good, or you're standing in mud, or like you're hungry and the lines are too long. Like it's weird, the music festivals have given me like that little bit of like adaptability sense, but like I went to festivals for so long in my life, and like sometimes it is, you got to survive in like the festival world, especially if you're on psychedelics. So like you learn how to like adapt. And like I had to surrender to like not having toilet paper, or there's never going to be warm water. So when you get into the shower, Wim Hof your way through this. And like also the mosquitoes, that was one thing. Or like surrender to, you're not going to understand everything people are saying to you, and surrender to feeling like not an idiot, but like I remember my cousin was telling me a joke, and like he said the punchline and I didn't understand any of it, and then once they translated it, I still didn't understand the punchline, and like they were all laughing around me, and I was like I don't get it, like this. And I didn't beat myself up in that moment. I was just like, I just don't get it, like you guys have a different culture. I told him, I was like, doesn't make sense to me.
Different sense of humor.
I'm like, I'm sure it's funny, but no entiendo las bromas. No, like I don't understand these jokes. Like, so that's what comes up for me right when you ask that.
Yeah,
Surrender.
no, that's a good answer. I think also there's like the surrendering to, you kind of touched on this too, like the emotions that come up, surrendering to the issue with, you know, one uncle and thinking you had a certain relationship, but then, you know, having to work through those emotions, surrendering to the reality of that, surrendering to the healing with your other uncle that God knows how long he was sitting on those emotions, and surrendering to the emotions that come through that. Like it's like there's so much that comes through the experience that you've had that you kind of can't be in resistance to it. Like the only way to move with it is to just move with the flow of it.
I like how you like pick up on like things that I'm not missing, but like when you just said like surrendering to what happened with your uncle, like with the healing, like that was a surrender. It was like I have to confront this man because like I'm here in Colombia now and I got to take this opportunity, but I'll surrender to him being like, maybe we won't go meet him, or like now, but that situation with my birth father is like, we got to do a DNA test to make sure. And like what this Fernando man might not be my dad. He might be my brother. I guess like the dad of Fernando had relations with my birth mother. And we don't know.
Oh my goodness. It's a novela.
It's a novela. And like, even if the DNA test comes back like Fernando's 50%, does that mean he's 50% my brother or my dad? So that's another thing I'm going to be like, I'm going to get an answer, but it might not be like a legit answer.
Okay, so we need to talk about this. Is there a story? I mean, there's got to be a story here, because I got to say, this is a bit of a plot twist, John. Like I was not expecting.
Yeah, neither was I.
Yeah, that Fernando would possibly be your brother. I mean, you did touch on this a little bit, but like that's kind of wild. Like how does that land for you? That's a big thing.
Well, the uncle that's like kind of the middleman between me and this birth father situation is a little kooky. He's like the Tio that's kind of like weird. Like when I said like he was singing with passion during my birthday song, it was like a weird passion. Like not like where I was like, you're weird, but like he was like, Feliz. Like when they say Feliz, he was just like, I remember his face being like, Feliz. I was like, whoa, that's aggressive, bro. But like he was feeling a lot in that moment. But I say that because like I can't fully trust what's going on, either through translation or like I don't know these people, or like I learned it with my first uncle. Like I can't, like after I lost his trust, I was like, all right, I can't put all my like trust into these people. So it doesn't like shake me too much to think that Fernando might be my brother or something. It's definitely an obscure thing to take in. But at this point in the journey, I'm like, that was whatever. Like my whole journey up to this point has been something else. So like, I'll take it as it comes. And like each step of the way, like sometimes I have like something I believed for so long and that's not true. Like for example, like my parents thought my name John came from like an Irish or like a Colombian singer down there, but really I learned my name, I was named after someone my sister had a crush on. Or,
really?
Yeah, like so like there's different things that I spend so long believing and then they get shattered in like a passing moment.
Oh my god, it's like a constant ego death.
Yeah, it's like a constant like, oh well, I guess I didn't know what was actually going on, or like, will I ever know what's actually going on? So with the birth father situation, it's kind of like, let's see what happens. And it's less like emotional for me. It's more like, yes, I want this and I'm longing for this, but it's kind of, and it's also symbolic in like how I'm trying to show up more as a man, where like my birth mom, I was like, this is like open arms, like we did it, we found you, there's going to be no struggle like reconnecting. With my birth father, it's kind of like I'm having to like talk to my uncle in a way where it's so straightforward, where like my uncle's like, let's do a hair test. I'm like, no, like I have like a spit test we can easily do. And my uncle's like, no, hair test. And I'm like, no, spit test. Like we're doing this in the way that I know will work, because you don't know what you're doing right now. Because he's even like, let's do a hair test, but first let me find a laboratory. And I'm like, no, here's a website. I'll send you the money, buy the ancestry kit. Just please do this way. Yeah. So I've been having to like be very like direct and very like, this is how we're doing it. I'll send the money. I'll help every single the way because I want this, and I'm gonna make this happen. If this can happen, let's make it happen. So it's been kind of like symbolic of like being a man, like making it happen, like
asserting yourself.
Yeah, asserting myself. And there's, I guess through what my uncle's saying is there might be a little bit of a like resistance from my birth father and the whole family over there, I guess. Like, I don't even know if I can believe that my uncle's talking to this man, you know?
Yeah.
Cause like my birth sister was like, if I saw a picture of Fernando, I could tell you if it's Fernando. And like half of me wants to be like, Tio, just send me a photo and we'll figure this out right now. And then like, but like, yeah, it's just kind of like, it's almost, I'm not being like gaslit, but it's kind of like, why am I having to jump through all these hoops, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's so complex too, because it's like there's this entire dimension to the story that's still a blind spot for you. You've had this massive reconnect, right? But it's like still with one side.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like layers upon layers upon layers, right? We're back in Pandora's box.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also like another revisiting that word surrender, right? Having to surrender into the reality that you can't necessarily just blindly trust, surrendering into the reality that there is this resistance, surrendering to what that entails given the current situation, who's involved, why is the resistance on the other side, what will that resistance lead to? Like, there's just so much that, yeah, I really can only imagine what it's been like, you know, walking in your shoes through this experience, through this huge initiation. It's kind of amazing. I'm so glad that we're capturing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Thank you again for like helping me facilitate this conversation, because even through this conversation, like living it and speaking it, and I know when I go back and edit it and listen to it, like I'm gonna hear things that like, because I haven't processed this out loud in such like a, like, I don't want to say safe way, but like we kind of went chronologically. And yeah, I spoke about like the actual activities I did, but we were getting into like the emotional side of it. Because like a lot of people are like, what'd you do? And like there's not people are like, how'd you feel? Like some people are like, how'd you feel? And like I just give them like really happy and content and like biologically safe. But now it's like I have like so many different things, and this conversation's helping me sort that out a little bit.
Awesome. I mean, I'm honored to have the conversation and for the trust, and it means a lot. And also it's such an interesting, unique glimpse into an experience that I don't have, that I won't have, right? And there's something very powerful in being able to hear someone's story and in such authentic truth. It's like I'm kind of, I feel like I'm like living it through your story. You know, I'm able to receive your experience through your story. And I think capturing the emotional essence of it is what it makes it so real, right? Like you can talk about the things that you've done, but there's that saying too, like you're not the things that you do. You're not any of the things that you do. You are the thing beyond that, you know, you are the light and the soul and the animation, the fire, the spark beyond that. And I think we capture the essence of that through our feelings, through the emotional body, through what our emotions inform in us and what they tell in us. And you've touched on that so honestly through this conversation. So it's been awesome to be a witness to this journey and to kind of, in a way, like kind of come full circle, right? From that first podcast to this one, like just so much has happened and so much growth and expansion and insight, and also healing and heartache and heartbreak. I mean, you've touched on it a couple times in this talk too, that, you know, kind of the way that heartbreak played into some of these emotions. And I mean, just if you're okay with it, quick question on that too. How do you think that influenced this experience?
It's like, it was such a deep bond that I knew it was a deep bond, but I didn't comprehend how deep until I had to unbond. And like, because my ex was someone I checked in with through that whole time I was going through this reclamation of my identity and birth family. Like before I went to Colombia, like she was there along on this ride with me. So like, she really did support me like a lot emotionally leading up to it, the best she could. So to like have to not come to acceptance, but like go through the stages of grief on like grieving this relationship that was really big in my life. There was parallels in like, in the ways like, how am I showing up? because I failed a lot in that relationship, like a lot. And then I failed a lot in the ways of my family, or like there was a lot of ways I showed up perfectly in my family and the relationship. And that's where I get the validation, because like in the relationship, it was not like a healthy one, you know, there was healthy things going on, but overall it was not good for her. It was not good for me. And there was a lot of like, kind of like that conversation we had earlier about like, I'm suffering too. Like I'm suffering too. It was kind of like symbolic of that, what was going on with me and her. Like, I don't want to get into details, but there was a lot of like, but I did this and you did this. And like, it was never like cohesive, like let's try to figure this out, because we both disrespected each other. And that's why I got to the point, like I had to validate myself in like what I was experiencing, because sometimes whether it was the adoption or the breakup or like work or like whatever I'm experiencing, like I would disassociate. I learned I disassociate, and like I can't disassociate. I gotta like say to myself, like I'm angry about this, like just because my partner might be like angry about a different situation and not believing I'm angry doesn't mean I'm not angry. It means like, you know, so like I learned like through that, like having to validate yourself is so like necessary, at least for me. Yeah, because it's lonely when you're about to go down to Colombia and you want to like share that with your family and be like, I'm so excited. But you don't want to make it seem like I'm excited to leave you guys and go see, like, because that's not what's true. So like in those moments, I had to validate myself. Like, I'm so happy I get to like go hang out with my family finally. And then once I'm there, I'm like, I'm finally touching my mom. Like, I'm finally like learning the language, or like, so yeah, I think that's the biggest theme, at least right now, is the validation of self.
That's amazing. And I think just like the entirety of this experience and everything that's gone down, it's like, what it sounds like to me is it's just deepening these layers of authenticity and how you're walking. It's like walking the walk, talking the talk, living your truth, living authentically, being honest with your uncle about not wanting to spend time, sitting in a circle of strangers that give you that mirror, right? These are all just enormous milestone points, I think, in a journey. And it's really cool to be able to witness it from the outside. So you've had quite the story.
And I feel like I'm coming out the other side of it now, because I feel like the big stuff is out of the way for the moment. Well, if a birth father situation comes to fruition, I already know that's going to be another big thing. But I finally feel like I'm doing this podcast again. I'm like learning how to sew. I want to get like an actual job. I've been applying to so many jobs. Like it feels good to actually do that, because I'm like, I need to like, I want to make money, not so I can like fulfill something for my parents, because that's what it was for so long. Like, let me get a job to like make my parents happy. But now I'm like, let's get a job so I can like move to Colombia and like support my business and help my Colombian family and stuff. So I finally feel like all the emotional stuff is kind of coming to a manageable level where I can focus on other things in life other than these big transformative experiences. Because I said that in the men's circle. I'm like, I feel like I finally can like live life again for a second, because it's been so hectic and so like confronting, and so like there's moments where I disassociate, like whether it's through like binge eating or television or social media. Like now I feel like I'm like cruising altitude, like unbuckle your seatbelts, walk around the cabin, like feel safe enough to like chill for a second while we get there.
You found your bearings.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
So with all of that, what is next for John?
I don't even know if John's my name, you know, like, but I don't mean that because like John's my name, but like
John or Johnny or Juanito,
all these things,
all of the above.
I say that because like I was talking to a friend about like I don't really identify with John. Like I'm proud my name is John McCormick because that's my grandpa's name, and then like my great grandpa's name was John McCormick. So like there's a good vibration and energy that. And my middle name is James, which is my mom's dad's name. So I'm named after both grandparents. So I'm proud of my name. I don't know why I'm talking about my name, but what's next for me, this person living on this planet? More podcasts. I want to be more intentional with these podcasts, with like the guests I bring on. not that I haven't been, but like I reached out to like, have you been seeing this AI stuff?
Yes.
And like I asked this AI, like, what are some good psychedelic companies that like maybe have like a lot of job openings? And it gave me like a list of these psychedelic companies, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm going to keep these on my radar and maybe I'll apply to them. But like I was just looking at the actual resources it gave me, and I found this website of like these Indigenous students that go to the UC Berkeley of Science for psychedelics. And like I reached out to a handful of them to be on this podcast. So like that's kind of the direction I want to go with this podcast, is like not just feature artists and like my friends, but like bring in some people that I can learn like and give a platform to like share, like, because one woman like she responded to me and I'm like, want to be on my podcast? She's like, yes, but after my dissertation in September. I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot of work. So I would like to like, at least for this podcast, bring in people that are way smarter than me and like just to become a student and like really learn in this podcast. Sewing, I'm off social media right now because I'm trying not be distracted, and I just started a little sewing class online, so I'm trying to get my skills up. But other than like activities, because we're not what we do, what's next for me is really like feeling, I don't want to say proud because I am proud, but feeling secure in like what it is I got going on and what it is that I'm doing. Because there's areas where I do feel that way, but I'm like getting my bearings across the board, you know? Like I'm trying to feel like good about my relationships, my finances, like where I'm living, because I don't want to live here anymore. Like I'm not like in this space. Like Orland Park is not the vibe, especially after Colombia. So what's next in like actual that type of, I want to live in Colombia by the end of the year and like be down there making clothes with my aunts who can sew and like sell their clothes back up here for like American money and pay them so that my aunt can finish her 2 stories that are unfinished. So yeah, I want to make clothes. I want to make this podcast like a place where people can come and learn about psychedelics, indigenous realities. Like, what else is there? Clothes, podcast. I still kind of make music just for myself. Well, I kind of want to go to a music festival. I like was thinking about that. Like, I want to like go and dance to like loud music. I haven't done that in a while, so I would like to do that. I wrote a bucket list down and I put it in my pocket. Fucking breakups, you know, like you're just like, what do I want to do with my life when I'm single? I'm like, what did I write down? I wrote down, jump out of a plane, generic, but I want to do it. Learn how to really sew, move to Colombia, learn how to make a fire outside, like with my hands and like the sticks and stuff, and then take a cooking class. That's all I got on my bucket list right now. So that's like what I wrote down for myself.
I think that's solid.
And it's good to say it out loud because now I'll keep myself more accountable.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
And I had one, I guess, final like major question. I think it's a good one to kind of like seal the thread together. Right now, knowing all that you know, having the experience that you had, having the growth that you've had, if you could go back to, say, January 20th of 2022
Mm-hmm.
and leave a little message or a note or something for yourself before embarking on this return to the homeland, what would you want to say to that version of you?
I don't know why, but like the phrase like it's not that serious like comes up. It's not that serious and you're doing it right. Like what you're doing is good. Like how you're navigating this is good. It's kind of like validating like good job. Like
You're not going to mess it up.
Yeah, you're doing your best right now and it's working and it's going to work when you're down there. Yeah, because I didn't come back from Colombia like feeling like, oh, I missed out on anything or like, no. Because yeah, there was a lot of, yeah, I think what I would write down is like, hey, don't take your, like, this is serious, but like, chill out a little bit. It's going to be okay. Like, you're going to make it. And then, like, yeah, you're doing good. You're, like, setting yourself up to, like, have a good time. And, like, you're going to have a good time. Yeah. That's a good question. That's a really good question.
It's a good answer.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a really good question.
Yeah. Final thoughts, closing remarks, parting words for anybody who might be experiencing the same thing. I know we kind of did this the last time we also spoke, is based on your experience. What would you share with somebody who's in your same shoes?
I would say, like, well, one, thank you for listening if you made it this far. It's a long podcast. Two, if you are in reunion with your family, like, I hope you found some type of, like, reflection in this story with your own story. Because I've had people reach out saying, like, yo, it's crazy to see somebody going through something I went through too, which makes me feel good because I'm like, we out here, bro. So I hope people that are in reunion, like, feel comfortable enough to reach out to me if you want. If you want to look for your family, like, be prepared, or, like, there's no way of being prepared, but, like, give yourself the awareness that, like, you don't know anything, and, like, you're gonna maybe get some answers that don't feel right, or, like, you might get some answers that might change in the future. Don't trust people automatically. Validate yourself. Be able to, like, on, like, a culture tip, like, because if you go, like, whether it's, like, South America or another country outside of America, be prepared for, like, a culture shock. Because, like, if you're used to living at, like, an American standard and you go back to a place like Colombia, like the barrios of Colombia, like, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's dangerous in the streets. You might get, like, a bug from the food. Like, there's cold water. Might not be toilet paper. People that might... Oh, it's okay if you don't want to look for your birth family too. Because I know there's been a lot of people that have reached out like, I'm never going to do that. Or, like, I'm just going to go to Colombia myself the first couple times and not try to look for my birth family. And, like, that's okay. Because this is big shit. Like, and you don't know, like, if your birth mom was the one who actually did put you up for adoption, or, like, you don't know the situation, or, like, I've known people that have, like, found their birth family, but the birth mother's dead already, and, like, oof, that hurts, you know, so and, like, hard. All of our stories are different, and, like, everything's gonna hit, especially when you're first learning about it. Like, let yourself feel it. Like, let yourself feel it as, like, at the age you are now, or, like, let yourself, or, like, whether you were, like, a young boy or a young girl growing up in America, or, like, you didn't have a good relationship with your adoptive family, like, try to, like, let yourself recognize that you are missing out on something, or, like, be grateful for what you had in America. I don't want to say but, and, like, it's okay to be, because for me, I say this because, like, I've had moments on mushrooms, like, where I've, like, been in the shower and I've gotten really, really mad that I didn't have my biological father. Like, I don't know if it was, like, a deep, like, resentment for whatever space was missing in me. Because I have a dad who's been amazing, everything I could ask for. But, like, when I put myself in, like, my adoptive healing mode, I let myself be so angry, and it felt so good to, like, give my, like, 8-year-old self the space of, like, for example, and this is, like, kind of vulnerable, but I'm like, why the fuck did I not have a dad there to protect me or teach me how to be, like, a Ramirez, or, like, who I am? Like, I don't know my lineage of men that I come from. Like, what the fuck? Like, I want to, because, like, I'm not a fragile dude, but I'm just learning how to do jujitsu, or, like, I've never fought in my life. Like, I didn't have, like, my dad in America is, like, a very chill, like, peacemaker. And, like, I think there's parts of me where I'm like, I want to be, like, kind of tough, you know? And, like, that's not to say, like, that's what makes a man. Yeah. But, like, I think there was a part of me that I'm like, what would have a birth father in my life done for me? Or, like, if I had older brothers, like, would I have wrestled with them or something? So, like, I say that because like, I don't know what your situation might be in your life, but like, you know, like if you were a young girl and like you thought about like, I don't know, wishing your mom did your hair in like the style of like Colombians, or I don't know, like it's okay to be sad about that and like grieve that, because it might show up in a different way, in an unhealthy way, and like, yeah, give yourself the space to feel some shit that you don't even realize that you're feeling, you know?
Yeah.
Because even like, it's weird, like, is the red light still going? Yeah. It's weird because like I've watched like videos of our Christmases growing up here in America, and like there is like a shift. Like I saw like a couple Christmases where I was just a young kid having fun, and then I hit like a certain age where I started becoming like angsty, and like we all did it. And like when I saw that shift in my energy through the videos, I'm like, oh, I wonder, I was probably going through some shit like that I didn't realize I was going through. Yeah. So yeah, because we have different ages that and we need to receive information from our family, and a lot of us don't get it. That's such a long-winded response, but like, yeah, like let yourself feel that shit, because you probably are angry, or probably have sadness or anxiety or confusion. Yeah, there's a lot of shadow work in that. There's a lot of shadow work in it. So feel that shit.
I think it's a great answer.
Yeah.
And what I gain from a lot of that is you can't really bypass these emotions. You can't bypass the work if this is a journey that you want to embark on. Just kind of understanding like what comes with the territory.
Yeah.
And it's no small thing.
Oh, that's such a better way to say it.
You did all the work. I just summarized.
That's such a good way to say it. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Honestly, though, just final words for you. Just being a witness to your journey, honestly, it's been amazing. And I know it hasn't been easy. I know it's been really fucking hard. But you've shown up every step of the way. And it's not about showing up perfectly, because what does that even mean? What does that even mean? You're showing up in your humanity. You're honoring what you're feeling. You're allowing the emotions to flow, which is already a huge deal, right? You're greeting, not just meeting, greeting each emotion as it comes. And I hope you're proud of yourself for that.
Thank you. I am. Thank you for saying that. I am proud of myself. And like, honestly, what's like, thank you. Like, I just want to say thank you, because like, I think younger versions of myself, if I received compliments like that, I'd be like, man, nah. But like, I think it comes with actually going through something, like, and like doing the work. Like it does, like I am proud. So I agree. I am proud. Thank you. I am proud. Because like I've done that validation of self in the hotel mirror. Like, good job for not going hanging out with your uncle you're mad at. Like, I'm proud of you, John. And like, I've said that to myself along the way, and like, thank you. And like, I'm like sharing this story to like bring people in so they know where I'm at, and like help other people out. So I'm hoping, like, because I've thought about that too in a weird way. Like if I die, like I left behind a good like trace of like, here's what I was about a little bit. I'm not fucking perfect at all. Like there's days where I'm bypassing, but like there's some days where I'm like, I'm really sad, I'm gonna go sit here and cry. Or I'm really angry, I'm gonna go punch a bag. So yeah, thank you. And like, you can only meet someone as far as they've met themselves, and I know that's why you're like such a good person to talk about this with and like share space with this about, because like I've known you for like 2 years now, maybe. But like I said, I would trust nobody else like to have this type of conversation with, because you asked the perfect questions, and like we went deep, and like, because I didn't know what we were going to talk about. I thought I was just going to be like, I did this, I did that, we ate this, we did that. But this was like the very nourishing to talk about. And I hope anybody that's listening, like, you know, walks away feeling empowered or more seen, maybe a little sad, like, because like you have to be sad in this, because you have to grieve a life you never had. But yeah, I guess I can kind of wrap it up. I don't know if I don't know how, like 110 minutes. I don't care about none of this shit anymore. Like, I don't care about likes. I don't care about followers. I'm just like, thank you for listening. And like, I'm happy to share this stuff. I'm always here to like, you can reach out to me like and talk about this, or like I have resources for like counselors or books, or like, yeah, I'm an open book for the most part. I might be a little like if you reach out to me about like deep shit about my story, I might not be so open about it, like we were talking about earlier before the podcast.
It's a trust thing.
Yeah, it's a trust thing. So like, yeah, I'm open in the podcast and I'm happy to share in this type of format. But if you reach out, maybe don't expect me to be so like, here's everything about my life. But I can be here for anybody that wants me to be there for them. Oh fuck, I just remembered I wanted to talk to somebody who's thinking about adopting. So yeah, like anybody, like if you have a family member that's adopted, or you thinking about adoption, or you're adopted, or yeah, I'm so open to all of this. Yes. And to be a stupid pluggy about my fucking business and shit, I just feel like I have to. If you listen to this podcast and like if I have merch on my website, which right now I don't, but discount code from this podcast will be adoption 333. You can apply that to anything you're purchasing on there, and I don't know how much discount I'm going to get for that. Maybe big one because it's a big podcast. So there's that. Feel that shit. Validate yourself. Thank you for interviewing me and talking to me and being a friend and like being awesome. Thank you for the tea. And Layla, thanks for coming too, wherever you at.
Resting here.
Yeah, that's my story. I'm sure there'll be another. This is probably a whole series in itself, you know, like when I go back next time, or like meet my birth father, or yeah, maybe you'll be able to speak really fluent Spanish one day and can interview my entire Spanish family.
That'd be awesome. I look forward to it.
Oh, I have a family in Cali that like administers ayahuasca too. So that's a whole nother.
All right, that's another podcast.
And they really want me to come like visit. So like once I can speak the language and feel comfortable going to Cali, like I'll do that. But yeah, that's kind of a cool thing to throw in there. But yeah, all right, we're done.
To close, to living authentically.
Salud.
Salud. To living in truth. To validating yourselves.
Yes. Oh, yes.
To just doing our fucking best.
We're doing our best out here.
Salud.
Fucking chewed up gum. That was good.